Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the time and want to thank the commissioners for your service, for coming here and just having this conversation with us as the marketplace keeps expanding. It's exciting as we talk about 5G, as we talk about also confronting some of the challenges within the industry and the growth in the industry. We want to make sure that the industry can keep growing as it is in America, leading the world in technology, and really y'all are at the forefront of it. The policy is real important to make sure that we're not having policy that gets in the way. I want to talk about a couple of things. First, on something that we had worked on together for years, and that is the consolidated reporting, to actually have all of the different various reports that the FCC had to do that were ridiculous, outdated. Y'all had to do a report, required by law to do a report on competition within the telegraph industry. I know a lot of people out there in the telegraph industry probably eagerly anticipated that report, but Samuel Morse would probably agree that time has come and passed. And finally, we were able to get rid of that report, among a number of others. And then with some of them, you had to do annual reports that really didn't make sense, and they were all done in silos. And now that we do have this first report that came out, the consolidated report, it put a lot of work on y'all's plate to come up with the first report that came out in December. And I want to first ask, how did that process work? Is it working the way we anticipated in terms of how the law gave you that ability to stop having to do things that didn't make sense and to come up with something that can actually help people, guide people about where the industry is and should go? If you, Chairman Pai, would fill us in.
I appreciate your question, Congressman, and the leadership this entire committee showed in passing that legislation. Sorely needed. It was something that I believed in strongly when I was a commissioner. I used to complain about the 16th, 17th iteration of the Orbit Act report, which reported to Congress, yes, the satellite industry was indeed privatized in 2001, and nothing has changed since then. I can now tell you that I know, as a chairman, having stewarded the first such report under the Consolidated Reporting Act, it is a tremendous benefit to be able to free up those staff resources that otherwise would be spent compiling these reports that nobody would read or that were otherwise outdated on things that really deliver value for the public interest has been a huge help. And so we'd be happy to work with you if there are additional consolidations in the works, so to speak. And I can tell you, though, that it's, from an administrative perspective alone, it has been worth its weight in gold.
Well, I appreciate that. It's good to hear. I do want to know, because we've talked a lot about this too, and that is that many of the laws that govern the video marketplace today are governed by the 1992 Cable Act. Now, back in 1992, I'm sure it was a good bill. You had cable companies, you had literally monopolies and monopolies. Cable companies would negotiate with, at the time, the 3 broadcast networks, and that was most of what you had. And then as you had some of the different cable companies starting to develop and emerge, in time we came up with satellite and broadband, fiber, so many other things. Now you have over the top. People are cutting their cord because they can do so many things, whether it's Sling or Roku, or you've got streaming services. And all of that is kind of the wild, wild west because the 1992 law is outdated. And so as we talk about how to get a more updated version of this, and I know I've worked on some things, you've worked on some things, some other members of the committee have been working on ways to update these laws. If you can give us any of your input, both Chairman Pai and O'Reilly, I know we've talked about these too, about things that we need to do or should be thinking about to update what maybe was modern at the time in 1992, but now is very outdated and not up to date with all of the changes that have happened in the video marketplace.
Congressman, that issue you've targeted, which is the transformation of the marketplace matched by stasis in our rules, is one of the most fundamental challenges we have with respect to our media regulations. I would defer to you. Of course, you've done a lot of great bipartisan work on this issue in terms of the particular legislative vehicle. What I will say is something that I proposed 6 years ago as a commissioner. Congress cannot always act, certainly not quickly with respect to some of these issues, but what would be extremely helpful is if we had something similar to what we have on the telecom side. Under Section 10 of the Telecom Act of 1996, for example, Congress extended to the FCC forbearance authority if the Commission determines that it's no longer interested in the interest of competition or the public interest to retain a particular regulation or statutory mandate. We have the power to refrain from enforcing it. To have similar authority for non-telecom services would enable the FCC to work with much greater dispatch, would allow us to align our rules with the realities of the current marketplace, and would now allow you to see the benefits of the innovation and investment that could take place if we didn't have rules on the books that were holding it back.
Thanks. I know I'm running out of time, but I appreciate all of you being here. And as we continue to work to make sure ultimately it's the consumers that we want to see get the best benefit, because competition benefits the consumer. And we want to make sure that the laws that we pass and that we have on the books are up to date and recognize where we are today so that consumers can continue to benefit from that competition and lower prices and more options for them. So with that, I appreciate with the work you do, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back.